The Canadian Forces Snowbirds have been touring the country to raise spirits during this pandemic. But tonight, the Snowbirds are mourning the death of a team member killed when one of their jets crashed in British Columbia. Captain Jen Casey was a public affairs officer with the Snowbirds, originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, a province touched yet again by tragedy. Tina Lovegreen begins our coverage from Kamloops tonight.
All eyes were fixated on the sky as the Snowbirds took off this morning, but then the unexpected.
He just crashed. Oh my God!
At first I thought the barrel roll was maybe a trick that the pilot was doing, but seeing the pilot eject and then the plane take a nosedive, obviously it wasn't a trick.
Witnesses took these videos showing two puffs of black smoke coming from the plane. Then the jet came crashing down into the front yard of a house. Halifax-born Captain Jen Casey was on board and died in the crash. She joined the Armed Forces in 2014 and the Snowbirds 4 years later. A former journalist, she worked her way up to public affairs officer with the Snowbirds. The other pilot landed on the roof and survived.
Amazingly, I don't know how he survived. I don't know how he survived that, because I don't think his parachute opened.
Blocks away, Dana Hings and her daughter jumped into their truck and were one of the first on scene.
There were already two other people there, one doing chest compressions.
The debris stretched over 3 different homes.
It was rather flabbergasting to hear the boom go off and come running outside and see smoke billowing out from his house and so on.
Dozens of first responders reacted quickly, and the city also quick to offer assistance.
And so this accident today really shakes us to our core, but we will respond to it in every way that we can.
In an Instagram story posted on Saturday, a Snowbirds pilot said the team was dealing with some electrical malfunctions. They also had said the weather wasn't suitable, with some low cloud cover making it unsafe to fly through. What caused this crash is still unknown and to be investigated.
And Tina joins us now from Kamloops. You've learned more about the condition of the other Snowbird.
We have, Ian, and the Prime Minister offered his condolences to the families as well as to the entire Canadian Forces Snowbird team, adding that for the past 2 weeks they've been flying over Canada, uplifting the nation's spirit during this difficult time. And the other member who was on board who survived, we know that his injuries are serious but not life-threatening, and he has been identified as Captain Richard McDougall, a 34-year-old from New Brunswick, and we're hoping to learn more about his condition in the coming days. Ian?
All right, Tina Lovegreen in Kamloops tonight. Let's go now to Anita Bath in Vancouver. And Anita, you've been talking to experts to get some insight into where the investigation could go from here.
Ian, a team from the Royal Canadian Air Force sent from Ottawa to look into what happened. Key to that could be any communication from the aircraft in those final moments. That could shed light on any problems they may have had. And the fact we know there is one survivor, well, that pilot will be key in the investigation as well. But you can see here the two planes are in formation together, and then there's a problem, and one plane ends up doing a steep climb to a higher altitude.
What you're trained to do is if there is a problem, say with the engine or with power on takeoff, you're instructed to zoom, you're to climb up to as much altitude as you can. You want to convert your airspeed into altitude and then either sort the problem out or if you have to eject.
And in the long history of the Snowbirds, there have been other crashes.
Yes, in fact, before this, there have been 8 other deaths. The planes have been in service since 1963. Over the years, there's been a lot of talk about replacing the jets. In fact, they were once supposed to retire this year, and then a decision to modernize them and keep them going until 2030. Upgrades do happen all the time, and there is a rigorous maintenance schedule. This footage you see here was posted over the weekend. It appears to show those checks happening. Now, I spoke with several experts today. Some say age has nothing to do with this. Others say that will definitely be part of the investigation.
There are airplanes around that are older, but typically those kind of airplanes aren't subjected to a lot of vertical forces. This is one thing that, it's a difficult thing to maintain an airplane that's older, getting parts. The engine itself, when I flew the airplane, was quite a reliable engine.
Now, I actually spent some time with the victim in this crash, Jen Casey, last summer at the Abbotsford Air Show, and I distinctly remember her telling me how grateful she was to have that job and how much she loved the Snowbirds and being a part of that team. This really is a country that does love that team as well, and people across Canada will be mourning with Casey's loved ones tonight. Ian?
All right, Anita, thank you very much. And we will have more on this crash later in the program. Welcome back. We have more on our top story, the sudden and deadly crash of a Canadian Snowbird jet in Kamloops, British Columbia. 2 planes took off this morning from Kamloops Airport just outside the city. Within seconds, one was clearly in trouble, entering a steep dive. The jet crashed into a quiet residential neighborhood, bursting into flames. We now know 1 member of the Canadian Forces Snowbirds team is dead, another injured. The investigation into why this all happened still in the early stages. And we're joined once again by Mark Miller, an aviation journalist who spent several years working and flying with the Snowbirds and has made documentaries about the team. And Mark, let's start with what we can see in the video when the jet steeply climbs. You touched on this with Anita, but what's likely going on at that moment?
Yeah, that's called a zoom. Basically, in takeoff, you're at kind of a low energy state. And if you do have a problem, we say in aviation that airspeed is life and altitude is life insurance. And so basically he was trying to convert his airspeed into some extra insurance to try to figure out what was going wrong. And normally at the top of that zoom, if you can't get the problem sorted out, you should punch out, eject basically.
So that zoom does tell us likely that there was a problem that the pilot identified, that he's trying to get that altitude. Now let's talk about ejecting. That's a split-second decision.
Absolutely, and I've been through the training for that, and I've flown in F-18s, I've flown with the Snowbirds countless times. I've flown the jet myself. You do go through the training, you do think about it, and fortunately I've never had to do it. I know many people who have had to punch out, and it's something that you cannot hesitate to do. You must do it as quickly as possible, or the results can be catastrophic, honestly.
And as far as we know, this was not in the midst of an aerobatic procedure. This was 2 jets simply taking off from Kamloops on their way to Comox on Vancouver Island. So it should have been just a routine takeoff, and all of a sudden you're making these split-second life and death decisions.
Yeah, it was just a transit flight. They were just moving from Kamloops off to Comox, where many of us were hoping to meet up with them and celebrate this amazing trip they've made across Canada, and it's helped raise our spirits. And of course now we're doing something different tonight.
You know the Snowbird community so well. What is the impact on that group of a fatal crash?
There are about 80 people on the Snowbird team right now. That includes technicians and pilots, and everybody's hurting tonight. And that's 80 people on the team right now, plus the hundreds and hundreds of people who've been involved with the team since it started 50 years ago. Everybody's hurting tonight. Everybody's thinking about the families involved and thinking about supporting everybody else. But in aviation, we all know the risks. We all understand it. And, many people are asking, well, is this the, worth it for the Snowbirds to continue to do this? And I believe it really is. It inspires people. It inspired me as a young boy when I was 9, the first time I saw the Snowbirds, to get into aviation and to pursue it. And, it's an amazing thing what the team accomplishes every year.
Mark Miller, we really appreciate your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.